Hello, everyone. Listen, if you watch his channel, you know the man, the podcast king. He's all over the place talking about bets, women's basketball, women's sports. He's been on here multiple times. We're lucky to get him. Kelvin, welcome back.
Hey, appreciate you having me on, Eric. Looking forward to chatting some WNBA.
So we hit the a little halfway mark. But we hit the Olympic break, so it's kind of that break for the season. Let's kick it off. What's been one or two of your favorite moments so far from the highly intense, highly talked about, highly interesting first part of the season?
Yeah, man, how am I supposed to pick one or two? I guess it would be a whole podcast on itself if we listed all the favorite moments. But I don't know if I'm stealing yours here, but I think the Commissioner's Cup was a really cool moment. The Lynx were I don't know if they surprised you and Lynx
No.
fans who knew what they're capable of, but I think they surprised a lot of outsiders for sure, who didn't see them being that much in the mix at the top of the standings. And the Commissioner's Cup, I think, really is when they kind of cemented themselves as having that status. Going on the road. I'll put that in quotes because it wasn't in Barclays, but going into New York City and beating the Liberty, who obviously have a hold on the one seed right now, that was really cool. Um, and then I think just we've had some really cool performances, like Kalia Copper early on in the season dropping 30 plus how many times? Like more than anybody else in the league. 5 times. You knew that off the top of your head. I'm impressed. I'm impressed. I did not tell Eric beforehand I was gonna bring that up, but Eric just knows right off the bat. 5 times. Um, we've seen Asia go countless times, 25 and 10 or 28 and 12 or whatever the case, putting up huge MVP numbers. Unfortunately for I know MVP, who maybe otherwise would have a case if we weren't in the middle of one of the greatest individual seasons of all time. And then like Angel Reese double streak, what Caitlin Clark's been doing in the last month after a really rough start. So many storylines. I don't know how to pick just one, but lots of cool moments already.
I'll be honest, like, well, the Kalia Copper thing, she did one against us when she hit the game-winning contested three in the corner. So I knew one of them, the 30-point games. I have two moments. I will say, since kind of we'll get to the Asia part of it, but I know Bridget Carlton should have won, but technically we have had an MVP. She has an MVP of something.
That is
Right now,
true.
so we do have an MVP. And I almost think that's why she got it. She had a good game. The name's right there. So that's part one. And then I have a petty one. I have to say my all-time favorite moment so far. I don't know if Calvin even saw it. It was gift. It was memed. Lynx versus Seattle. I think I even sent it to him. When Fee waved to NECA and pointed and said scoreboard, that almost felt as good as the four championships. To do it against NECA from Fee at home, the best. That was all-time favorite moment for someone who's never been petty, probably a day in her life. For Fee to wave to neck and then win the game, I'm telling you, right up there with the championships.
Yeah, what you said, someone who's never been petty in her life. I do have to appreciate when players who have a certain type of personality get caught up in a really big moment and all of a sudden like let out their inner whatever side that you don't usually see, but you see it because of the emotion of the moment, and that seems like what happened with Fee. So you have to love it.
Oh, I was almost on the court. Just saying, almost on the court. The best. And it's just with the rivalry of who it was against. Oh, the best. We'll get there. So let's do my favorite thing. I love talking awards. We've kind of danced at it. Let's start with the MVP. So back at the preseason, we both agreed it would likely be Asia. We're looking smart right now. Would you say is there anyone else that you feel has a chance at it? Is it kind of, are you more cemented in Asia, wavering at all? Could you see it go another way? What's your thoughts on that pick from preseason?
At this point, and this is not saying anything about anybody else who's having some incredible seasons, but knock on wood, unless Asia were to get hurt in the Olympics and come back and not play the rest of the WNBA season, no, it's over. It's hers. Yeah, that's just how good she's been. She's on pace to break the scoring record, scoring average. She's right there in rebounding, one of the top five all time. Put those together, even regardless of anything else she's done, is already one of the greatest individual seasons, like I said, that we've ever seen. And what she's been able to do. I mean, what she was able to do early in the season. Obviously, they lost some games without Chelsea, but they were 6-6. They would have been like 2-10 without Asia during that stretch. They would have completely fallen apart. Her and to some extent Jackie Young obviously has a big part in that too, and taking over for point guard. But what Asia was able to do and what she's still been able to do with Chelsea back, I don't see anyone taking it. And I think there are a lot of years where there may be one or two other players who would have a case, but you just don't see anyone average 27 and 12. That's just not something that happens in this league. So I think it's automatic right now.
Fair. I'm going to play devil's advocate and push back a little bit. Actually, this is the question. So no one, ever since they went to the full thing, has ever won it on a team outside of the top three. Right now, Aces are fifth. So my question is, do you think that streak changes, or does the Aces power their way into the top three in the second half of the year?
I think they get their way into the top three. And I know we usually even see the MVP from the number one or maybe the number two seed, occasionally number three. But this is the type of year where what Asia is doing is so historic that they don't need to be the one seed. I don't see them catching New York for the one seed. You're right that if they're hovering around 5 or 6, and at the time that Chelsea Gray came back and they were 6-6, I had this conversation on another podcast, and they were seventh in the league at that time. And at that time, it looked like Asia would win the MVP, but on that podcast, I said if they were to somehow finish sixth or seventh, that would change, but they're not going to. Chelsea Gray's going to come back, and then she did. They've already worked their way up a couple spots to fifth, and they're only half a game out of third. So at this point, I think it's pretty likely that you see them get into the top three. They literally could get into the top three like on day one after the break, that because they're within half a game. So top two, maybe. At that point, they'll have to make up a couple games and catch the Sun, who obviously added Marina Mabry and got a little bit better. So top two, borderline, I'm not sure. Top three, I feel pretty safe in saying that, and I think that's enough. I think if you get up to third, it has to be Asia Wilson for MVP.
I don't know. That third place team right now is pretty strong. They're coming out pretty strong in the second half. Okay.
Who's that? Who might that
That
be?
would be the Lynx. Is a game on. And I said that's my only other pushback is who I picked for MVP has a better record. They're 1-1 against each other. She went 9-2 in June. I'm just saying, and doing a double average at 6-1 instead of 6-5, whatever Asia is. So I think it's going to be Asia. She's playing great, outstanding. I think, personally, I think Fee is that runner-up. I think what you've seen Fee do this year and what she was expected to do, she is the clear star in this team. We've had a lot of players have stepped up. We've had a really good offseason, good players, but it still revolved around Fee because you saw when she was out for those 5 games, the 6 games, I guess you can count the quarter and 4 minutes that she missed against Connecticut. It was a different team. That she has so much gravitational pull on both ends. That's why I say if Asia wasn't having an outstanding Fee, I think it could be neck and neck. Fee's getting closer and closer and closer, but it's going to be Asia, barring hopefully no injuries, or unless they leave her in Paris in the Olympic or something like that. It's going to be Asia Wilson. We can almost cement that one right now.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree with everything you said about Fee as well. And she would be a pretty clear second for me right now. And if she's not unanimous all WNBA first team, and if she's not getting at least top 3 votes, if not mostly top 2, as the MVP, I think that voters are doing something wrong. She missed a few games, which does hurt her as well, I think. And we've seen how durable Asia is. She plays 40 games every year, or 34, 36, whatever it was when she came into the league. And Fee only missed a week, but when you're trying to catch someone who's having that historic of a season, you need every game you can get. So I think that hurts her a little bit as well when you really have like no margin for error in this race. But I do think that she's without question having her best season and the second best season in the league this year.
I like it. Now we'll go to the award that may get people really fired up. Let's go to Rookie of the Year. Calvin's quote back in the preseason was, "It's a done deal. It was already over." I have to ask, any swaying, any contender, staying with that pick, more cemented in that pick? Where's Calvin sitting on that Rookie of the Year?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because there was a little while where Angel Reese was really threatening, I think, because obviously, like I said off the top, Caitlin Clark did not have a very good first month of the season. Part of that is because the expectations that were placed on her were really unfair, and she was never going to come in and be the best player in the league like people thought. And part of that is that they played 11 games in their first 20 days, and like seven of those were against the Sun, the Liberty, the Aces, the Lynx, whoever, like the top tier of the league. So she really was thrown into the fire and didn't perform up to what maybe you would expect for someone of her caliber. Since then, she has been outstanding. We saw she broke the record for assists in a game with 19. She averaged double-digit assists in an entire month in winning Rookie of the Month for this past month, and she's elevated the play of the whole team around her too, as the Fever looked kind of dead, and now they're firmly back into the playoff position. So for me, at that point, after that first month or so where she was struggling and Angel was starting to build that double-double streak, I would have been a little bit hesitant. I would have said Angel might have a shot at this thing. At this point, I still think it's Caitlyn, and I think it's Caitlyn pretty clearly. And I will say the same thing I will about MVP, where what Angel has done has been historic, and what Angel has done would win Rookie of the Year in a lot of years. I mean, 2021 would have been slam dunk Rookie of the Year. No shade to Crystal Dangerfield, I know, who won it for the Lynx. But
Sabrina got injured. That was the reason we won that one.
yeah, and who knows? Maybe it would have been Sabrina if she were healthy, but without her, I don't think anyone that season had a season nearly as good as what Angel Reese is having. So there's a lot of years where Angel would have won it. Same thing, like Nafisa Collier, but Caitlin Clark has turned it on and has gotten to that level that a lot of people expected, and I think Angel's still kind of fighting an uphill battle at this point.
So I'm going to agree with you. I think it's Caitlyn. I will say this. First, I want to give flowers to Elle Duncan, Andrea Carter, you guys on the pod, everyone who's holding, I think, reality to the fire and not letting people get nuts. I will say this. I think if people were more honest, present company excluded, of course, I think they would realize that this would, if you actually looked at just their stats and what their production, this would be right now, I would say, a neck and neck race. I think it would be a discussion kind of who finishes higher. Does one finish in the playoffs? Does one not? Kind of situation. I don't think anyone, I don't trust that any of the voters would have the guts to actually vote for Angel Reese, barring a Caitlin Clark injury. Not saying Caitlin doesn't deserve it. I'm saying when you look at the production, if Angel's production actually deserved it, I don't think anyone could pull the trigger and actually vote for her. That's my opinion. I think it's going to be Caitlin, and it's not always going to be Caitlin. Like I said, it's not that her play doesn't. It's just I think if people are being honest, Angel has done enough to be right there neck and neck, at least right now. Except Caitlin's breaking records, but when you break a record that Candace Parker set, over 2 seasons, by the way, not even just one, I said I will be the first to admit, I didn't think Angel would transition to the pros as much as she did, and I really like her mentality and her attitude of she knows the vets are going to give her. When she got chokeslammed by Alyssa Thomas that time, she said, "Thank you. I understand it's going to be physical." At the games we've seen when we played her, she was very appreciative of Nafisa Collier and like what was like going against her and stuff. Like, I've really enjoyed Angel Reese as a pro, and I agree it's going to be Clark's award. I just think if based on stats, it would be closer than it's going to end up being personally.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. And I've said this too, where I think part of that uphill battle that I've talked about that Angel is fighting is the fact that tie is going to go to Caitlyn. If it's close, you know who voters are. They're the media. The media loves Caitlin Clark. It's going to go to Caitlyn. So if you're anyone other than Caitlin Clark, and at this point Angel Reese is the only other one in the conversation, and you want a chance at Rookie of the Year, you have to really, really separate yourself. You can't just be right there on the same level in the same conversation in the same tier. You got to be a step above. You got to separate yourself and really have a gap. And I don't think that she's done that, which is all about Caitlyn and not about her. Because like you said, breaking a record held by Candace Parker, it is crazy that both of these rookies have broken, not a rookie record, WNBA, big major WNBA league records of all time held by some of the best players ever. And they're only getting started. So it makes the race really fun. And I wish we had this is one of those years where I like you almost wish you could do like a co-award or something like that. But yeah, it's I think it's Caitlin.
Fair, I'll take it. So we never did official like a prediction on the other one. So I'm gonna see any coach of the year standing out right now to you.
Yeah, that one's a good question. I do think you're gonna like this. I think Cheryl Reeve is right there for it. We'll see how the rest of the season goes because now that they have Marina Mabry, if the Sun are able to, I think Marina Mabry fits really well with what they needed. And if the Sun are able to somehow turn that into the one seed, if they're able to make up that gap between them and New York, I could see a situation where maybe Steph White wins back-to-back Coach of the Year. Because I don't think anyone expected the Sun to come in and get the one seed this year, even though we knew what they are. We knew they're good and they're contenders. Um, it could go to Sandy Brondello just from the standpoint of they have the best record in franchise history. They got the best record in the league right now. They're better than they were last year when they already were really good. Are the Liberty, but in terms of what they have all done from a pure coaching perspective, I think Cheryl Reeve has done the most with what she has. And I mean, even if you throw out kind of the GM side of it, of bringing in some of those additions and only what she has done with those additions, integrating them, what Courtney Williams and Alana Smith have brought to this team, I think it has to be her. And when you look down the standings, there's one or two coaches who you could talk about who have done an excellent job too. I think Teresa Weatherspoon is probably the biggest one
Mm-hmm.
for me that I would say it is right there in terms of the coaching job that she's done with Cheryl. At the end of the day, I think it's really, really hard to give Coach of the Year to a team that's not in that top tier of contenders, which
Okay.
is, I would say, 1 through 5 right now. You could maybe throw the Mercury in there as sixth, maybe. I know we're going to get to that, but anyone below that 5 or 6 line right now, I think is it again. Ty goes to Caitlin and Rookie of the Year. Ty is going to go to a contender. If you think Cheryl Reeve and Teresa Weatherspoon have both done an outstanding job, I think Ty is going to go to Cheryl Reeve. But I do think that Teaspoon is going to be a Coach of the Year at some point in this league. The vibes are incredible. What they are building with Angel Reese and Kennedy Carter and Camila Cardoso and this young core, it's only going to get better. And when you look down the road a year or two, if they're already in the playoffs this year, which they are right now, they are in a top 8 spot, a year that no one expected them to be there. Imagine with the growth and bringing a couple more picks, what they can get to. I really love what they're doing. I love the vibes in Chicago, but I love the vibes in Minnesota too. And Minnesota's vibes are a lot closer to championship vibes, and Chicago's vibes are. It's really cool that we're even in the playoffs at all vibes. So for me, it's Cheryl. I don't think that one's nearly as set right now as Asia or Caitlin. I think the rest of the season could
Right.
have a lot of say in it. But if I'm voting today, I'm voting Cheryl.
I agree with those two. Obviously, Cheryl Reeve, I still say is the smartest coach, the best coach, probably X's and O's, and to get what she gets out of her players in the league. I will say this about Teaspoon. I think she was the perfect coach for the personalities of like Kennedy Carter, Angel Reese, Cardoza. She was the perfect one for that. They were counted out. They weren't viewed as something any like all even Angel falling to 7 and all that. She was the perfect one to kind of show them like working hard, putting nose to the grindstone, showing appreciation for the people that come before you. And I just think, like I said, she has them. We don't know what they'll be without Marina. You know, Bannon's a shooter. You have Mariah Jefferson, who I think is still injured. So you don't know what that will be. But I said she's that perfect coach. And and it's one of those situations where you see them taking on the mentality of their coach. Like that, just never give up, working hard, feisty, but I wouldn't even say that they're when I think feisty like you could lose them feisty. I'm thinking more Connecticut than I am Chicago, and so to me, she's been one of the most impressive jobs. So I said Cheryl's been amazing, obviously, but I wouldn't be mad if Teaspoon got if they make the playoffs with what they were expected, and especially now without Marina, I wouldn't be mad if Teaspoon got Rookie of the or Coach of the Year.
Yeah, well, especially without Marina now, you do bring in Bannum, but still, like that team doesn't have a lot of shooting, and what they've been able to do without that. And I agree with you. It's easy to like talk about the non-basketball aspect too, and it sounds kind of cliche, but I think it's so real with her, the personality, and when you watch some of the press conferences or some of the different times that her players are asked about her, it is
Mhm.
so clear they ride or die with her so hard. Kennedy like would go to war with Teaspoon in a second, and she has just in the matter of a few months earned so much trust and respect with that group of players that she has, and deservedly so. Obviously, she's a legend in this league
Mhm.
in her own right, even before she started coaching. So it's really cool to see, and I can't wait to see what that builds into going forward.
So now we talked about it. Let's do the pretender and contender of the top six. We'll go down. Tell us if you think they're a pretender or a contender. I'll do the same. I only have two pretenders here of the top six.
Okay, okay.
We'll start with New York. Pretender or contender? Oh, and I want to make a caveat. These are saying that they are fully healthy all the way through. No major injuries to the main key players for their team.
Okay, we're talking about championship contender.
Hmm.
I'm gonna say contender for New York. Fully healthy, New York's a contender.
I will agree with that one. Pretty simple. I will say the one thing that maybe could get in their way is I think the defense of their backcourt is going to eventually going to be pushed to the limits of when Sabrina and Flute are going to have to kind of lock down on guards. If you have more scoring options from the perimeter and Laney's already on one, I think you're going to have them locked down. But I still say contender.
I agree, and I think the good thing in that regard is that since Sloot came back, I think Sandy has kind of shown a willingness to sort of admit that, hey, we know Sloot's 35 years old now.
Hmm.
You're not the same player, or especially on the defensive end, maybe as you were. We have Kayla Thornton, we have Kennedy Burke. Like, let's use these players. Sloot, we're not like you're not riding the bench or anything, but we're also not going to give you 32 minutes a game because we have better defenders and players who are younger. And I think the fact that Sandy, it would be easy when you have a legend like that and someone that you brought in free agency as a big part of your super team to sort of overcommit to them.
Hmm.
But I think Sandy's willingness to give Kayla Thornton a lot of those minutes, even when Salute has gotten back into the fold after missing that time, I think is a good sign for that. And I think that's something New York is going to have to lean into in the playoffs if they want to make a run.
I also think JJ and Stewie can't always fall in love with the 3-point shot. They both are capable, but they've both had moments of like, get down low, go get rebounds, go do, and they fall a little bit in love with the 3-point shot. And if it's not going from them, you also don't have rebounders there. It's kind of a double-edged sword. So, but obviously a contender.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Now remember, my goal is always to make Calvin be spicy. I'll probably be spicy on this one. Calvin, Connecticut, contender or pretender?
Well, I know where you're going if you're going to be spicy. Before the Marina Mabry trade, I might have said the same as what I think you're about to say. I might have said pretender, but I just think she is the perfect addition for them. I think exactly what that team was missing is what Marina Mabry brings to the table. And with her in the fold, I mean, we'll have to see how she integrates. I'm sure it'll take a couple weeks to kind of build that chemistry and things like that. But I have to put them in the contender category at this point.
I'm going to say full-on pretender. And here's where
Okay.
I'm coming at it. Now, once again, Mabry fits them personality-wise beautifully, perfectly. Now, I'm coming at it from the two games I've seen them. The one in person when Fee got hurt, and then the one out in Connecticut. Those are the ones that probably, and I've watched them, of course. Excellent defenders, as long as you're called for nothing. Their defense to me is as good as the officials allow it to be. And I mean, you look at the Angel Reese double flagrant thing, or flagrant two. When I'm watching the games, especially the one in Target Center, there was never a screen for K-Mac or Fee that they weren't being dragged behind, they weren't being held. So I look at and I'll even look at this in overtime. Fee got called for, we'll say, a generous foul when she blocked a shot because Dewana Bonner screamed. I think we've seen moments of Dewana Bonner really cold, and she's also been she can get going. I also think I'm going to go with a little bit of history. Connecticut, until you show me you're not going to flop in the playoffs, and I don't really trust a lot of what you have going on outside. Like I said, you're physical, and you're going to play as physical as you're allowed to play. But playoffs, sometimes those whistles get a little tighter. And if it gets tighter on, say, an AT, a Bonner's cold, Mabry, I think, has even at times been. I'm not saying like she's probably a better defender and a better lead guard than Banham was, but I'd say Banham's probably a better pure shooter in that situation. You lost a little bit of shooting. Ty Harris had a great year. It's almost one of those things I don't believe it till they prove it to me. I haven't seen anything in the games that I'm like, they can go and win a title. Even when Fee went down for 13 and a half minutes, the Lynx are within 4. And if you call K-Mac gets a steal, that could be a 2-point game right there. So I just haven't seen where they can pull, when I think when you get into with an Aces, a New York, even a Phoenix who can maybe give it back to you a little bit, I just, until I see it happen, they have a history of flopping. I'm going to believe it's going to be a flop until I see otherwise.
Yeah, that's fair. They've been in the playoffs as a high seed quite a few times in recent years, and they haven't gotten over that hump. But they did make the finals twice. They were about 4 minutes away from a championship in Game 5 against the Mystics. So they've been about as close as you can be without getting over that hump. And I don't think that they'll be the favorites, but I think they got a shot.
And I'll be honest, I regret to say this, I'd take them in the playoffs. I'd take a Lynx Sun matchup in the playoffs. If Fee stays healthy, I'll take that matchup 100%. So I'll take that. I would, because after last year we pushed them.
Right.
I'd take that.
Careful what you wish for.
To me, because here's the thing, I think Fee's a more well-rounded player than anything they got.
I agree with that.
I think she's and I think she can come out more. I mean, even like I said, that game where she missed 13, 14 minutes, they probably win that if she stays in that game. I mean, because of how much she pulls. So let's get to the MVP's team. Minnesota, contender or pretender if fully healthy?
Yeah, I'm being the nice guy here, giving everyone contender, but I'm going to say contender for Minnesota Lynx too. I know at some point I got to call someone a pretender. They can't all be contenders, but
I only got 2 pretenders. So
you got out of the top 6, right? We're going top 6.
Top 6. I only got 2 pretenders.
Yeah, I don't even know if I have 2. I have 1. I'm going to say I have 1.5, but
Minnesota
the Lynx
one?
are not one of the 1.5. The Lynx are one of the 4.5 contenders, in my opinion. I think. I don't know. I'm a little bit surprised because I would not coming in the season. I would have been wrong. I wouldn't have had them as a contender coming in the season. I would have had them as a solid playoff team. Would not have had them as a championship contender. I would have, obviously we were talking about Aces and Liberty coming in the season. That's always the last 2 years always been the talk. And I would have said if there is a team that I think maybe can dethrone one of those two, it's the Storm. Don't know if I see the Sun do it. Don't know if I see the Lynx doing it. I would have been wrong because that contender tier is a lot deeper than I would have thought, and the Lynx are solidly part of it.
I remember Cheryl said at the beginning of the season, and this is what, perks our ears. She said this training camp felt like one of the dynasty training camps. And when you hear stuff like that, like Cheryl's not really one to like over compliment or anything like that. So when you hear her say that, you kind of, as fans, you perked up your ears and you're like, okay, something's here. I think one of the best things is the defined roles on the team. We know who the defined 1A is, 1B is K-Mac. We know these defined roles. But you have the like Chechis, you have the Bridget Carltons, the Courtney Williams, the Alana Smith. Tantisha Heidemann saved us the last game against Atlanta before the break. You've had a lot of depth where you see here. We have our point guard, and we have 3 of them. Ollie has come in multiple games and completely changed it around with her defensive intensity and getting steals. Peely's had good games, good moments when she's come in. Dorka, and this is even without Diamond really even, she was injured for most of it, not even really reaching 100%. She'll be back to 100 when we come back. I just think it's knowing the roles and everyone just playing to it and kind of leading off their defense, having an improved defense that we have not seen. Even in the arena, you can feel that energy of their defense, of them flying around. They trust that the other one's going to be there. They trust when they're going to get their hands. They run. It feels different. Do I think they're the favorite to win it? No. Do I think that if everyone keeps playing that way, their defense can get them to that level? And so that's why I will say contender. So that's why I just think the defense and the knowing of each role.
The defense is exactly what it is for me too, and that's why I would have been wrong, is because the last 2 years the Lynx defense, I'm sure you will admit, was not very good, and they've completely turned it around, and that's the key to everything for them this year, and that's what's going to carry them if they are going to make a playoff run.
Fair. Now the other one, Seattle Storm, contender or pretender?
That's my half. I said 4.5 and 1.5. That's my half. The Storm. I'm not going to say they can't win it. I'm not going to go full pretender. They have absolutely no shot. But I think that a lot of things would have to break their way if they're going to win a championship this year. I think first off, that's the team probably even more so than the Aces, who obviously don't have very much depth either. But the Storm are the team the most, I think, who absolutely has to stay healthy. I think one injury could completely knock them out. They also are, for the most part, in their 30s when you look at that core, which means when you get to the end of a now 40-game season and into the playoffs, who knows? That could happen. I don't want it to happen. Obviously, you don't want anyone to get injured, but even aside from that, fatigue might start catching up to that team. I do think Jordan Horston has stepped up really nicely as the fifth starter, which they needed because that core four is great. And as he, of course, being the one exception to all of this, as he obviously is only getting better and better as a young player who I think should have been an all-star. But I've been so impressed with how good NECA has been this year, and so impressed with how Skylar Diggins-Smith has been coming off of that time off. But I just think that this team has no margin for error. This team is going to need, like I said, a lot of things to break their way. They're going to need the right matchups. They would really help them if they could get up into the top three, because I don't think you want to go to war in that 4-5. The 4 versus 5 is going to be the toughest first round game by a mile, because I think there's 4.5, so sort of 5 contenders, and only 2 of them are going to have to play each other in the first round, and the other 3 are going to get to play someone else in the first round. So, and right now it's looking like the Storm are going to be in that 4 versus 5, which probably is going to go to 3 games, probably going to be a battle, probably going to be worn out from that, and then have to go on the road and face most likely the Liberty as the 1 seed. Just think it's a lot to ask for them to do that. And even if they make it out of that, now you got a 5-game series against whoever comes out of the other side of the bracket. So that's a lot to ask. But if they are all healthy, and if they are clicking on all cylinders, they do have a chance to do that. They do have the talent, and they have shown me at their peak this year that they have what it takes.
My sad thing about Seattle is I wish I would have asked you the over and under on Skylar Diggins doing this in a season. It might have been 20.5.
I'm sure we hit the over in like May.
Fair
on that one.
I'm going to say pretender. I feel, and maybe it's just, once again, recency bias, not recency, but like when you watch them, Jewel Lloyd and Skylar Diggins, I feel, have had really streaky seasons so far. There's been a lot of games where they are 30% or below, or they're shooting in the 29s, 30s just to get to 7-8 makes. I think Skylar has taken us, not necessarily, not even, I said she's coming off a year not playing. I don't think Skylar's defense is what it used to be. I don't think Skylar is someone you can put on someone and assume her to lock down. I think she's going to maybe funnel them to NECA, funnel them to Evie. Lloyd, Lloyd is, Olympic team member. She can get hot. It feels like she's either like dead on though or dead off this year. Like there's rare where you're going to get her like, and I also feel like it takes her longer to maybe shake it off. Like if she's had a bad first half, she's still next year be like, I can explode in the third. And it seems like that shaking off kind of takes a little bit longer. She can hit a big one here, but is also going to maybe clank 2 of them off at the clutch time. I would go to battle at that 4 and 5 as a Lynx fan, because I will stand 10 toes down that Nafisa Collier is not losing to NECA Gumake, personally. I just think NECA relies on being, if she has a matchup that can meet her athleticism, NECA to me looks kind of impactful, but not like to take over impactful. So there's where I haven't seen it, except they, against the Lynx, lost the season 3-1. The only one that they won was Fee out. So obviously NECA had a great game. I would say pretender until I see at least consistency from one of the guards. Ezzy's probably been one of their more consistent players. NECA's going to consistently probably get you 15 to 20, maybe a little bit high. She can maybe rise up a little bit higher, maybe give you 7 to 12 rebounds. But if your guards are both really cold, really streaky, that's going to bite you at some point in the playoffs. And unfortunately, that tends to bite players in the worst of times.
That's a good point, and I think part of that slim margin for error that I talk about with the Storm is that the guards, but in particular Jewel Lloyd, needs to be going full gold Mamba mode. The type of games that we've
Hmm.
seen her have where she's just hitting from everywhere, dropping 35, and there's nothing you can do about it. We know she's capable, and that's why I'm not willing to go like full pretender, why I'm saying half, because like if she does do that, this team is really hard to stop because I agree with you that like that I don't really see the full kind of takeover mode in the other players. I see the takeover mode in Jewel at her peak,
Hmm.
but the Storm's problem is I think they need that. They're not going to win the championship unless they get that. Whereas I think some of the other teams have margin for error when you look at like the Aces who where I'm sure about to get to like even if Asia is having like a rare off night, Aces can still beat you.
Hmm.
They can still make a deep playoff run and compete. We even saw it last year, like game four on the road. Asia didn't have an off night, but she had an awesome night. But without Chelsea Gray,
Hmm.
they still were able to win a finals road game, game four. Like they have margin for error, even though they don't have a lot of depth. I don't think the Storm do. But if Jewel Lloyd is on an absolute heater, the Storm can compete with anyone in the league. So that's why they're sort of a half for me.
And Calvin's the numbers guy, so I made sure I did my research and development here for numbers. I've shared this with him before. It's one of my favorite stats. Uh, in the last 2 years, when they both play, Nafisa Collier's 7-0 against Nneka Ogwumike. Since she came into the league in 2019, in games where they both play, Nafisa Collier's 9-4. I'll take my chances with Fee against Nneka every day of the week, if both healthy.
Dropping stats on me.
Now let's go to the two-time defending champs, Aces, contender, pretender.
Contender, easy, no question. It's you can look at the way they started the season and 6-6, but didn't have Chelsea Gray. They had a couple close losses where the other team just unleashed from three. I mean, they played the Mercury two out of their first three games, and that girled out offense just like went crazy on them. So I think the 6-6, even without Chelsea, was kind of a little bit skewed. But when you look at what they have been in the last several weeks and what we know they can be from the last couple of years, easy contender.
I think contender. Two players that I look to that could maybe like solidify them, not even just from contender to back to favorites, is if you get a little bit more from Kia Stokes and Alicia Clark. Jesus, can't speak. Those two, I think, have at times kind of faded. Kia Nurse, or not Nurse, Kia Stokes sometimes wants to take shots, sometimes doesn't. And I realize Asia's owning the world and the paint, and I get it. I just think if you can get production from Clark and Stokes, it's just takes you to another level because of how high the level Asia's at when Chelsea Gray's cooking, which we haven't even seen her start to cook yet. I mean, she's still missing shots that Chelsea Gray is going to hit when the brightest lights are on and you're in the playoffs. So I mean, and Jackie Young has really taken a step forward. If you get that Stokes, if you get those, I mean, Kate Martin, I don't think we know what officially is there. So if she's back, she's been a great lift off their bench for them. Contender easily, not even wavering on that one.
I would go as far as to have them the favorite right now. They're not going to get the one seed, but
Sure.
I would
Fair.
still have them favored.
Now I'm guessing we haven't gotten one yet, so I'm guessing by the math here. Phoenix, contender or pretender?
So if I'm doing the math on your pretenders and contenders, I might have messed it up in my head, but I think this is another one we're going to disagree on. I'm going to have Phoenix as my pretender, my one that's not a half, just full pretender. And I understand like they definitely look a lot better when, like when BG came back and they missed Beck Allen for a while and she came back, and when they have that starting five intact, it works really well together and they have looked better. But even then, I'm not really impressed with this defense, even when everyone's in the lineup. I think that they have a lot to work on that side of the ball.
Hmm.
And we talked about that's why I love the Lynx so much. That's why I'm so skeptical of this team so much too. And when you take so many threes as they take and allow so many threes on defense as they do, like yes, sometimes you're gonna have a hot night and the other team's gonna go cold and you're gonna beat the Aces like what they did in the first week of the season we saw. But more often than not, like That's really tough, especially on the defensive end when you're allowing so many threes, and when you go up against a team like New York, who you're going to have to go through, probably going to be the one seed, who can spread you out, is one of the best 3-point shooting teams of the last couple of years. I just don't see it. I just don't see it with this team.
Fair. I feel like I give Phoenix the benefit of the doubt based on why I held it against Connecticut, and that's history. Phoenix has a history of they don't care what their seed is, and Diana Taurasi don't care who she's playing, where she's playing. The brightest lights, Diana's ready to go. My hesitate, and I like this team. I think Copper has been outstanding. We've been a victim of all of a sudden she can't miss anything because I still stand by those 2 threes she hit against the Lynx to win by 1. Both well contested, both very well contested shots. So I think that they have all the pieces if everyone is healthy. I think Becca Allen's a big piece, and I think it's nice to have 4 shooters around BG. My hesitation is, and I don't. This has been maybe a knock on her career, so I don't know if this is just what we're gonna get from BG. I always feel disappointed from her rebounding. Like, you're
Yep.
6'9". I don't, and once again, as much as I love her, I don't feel 6'1" Nafisa Collier should be almost averaging 4 more rebounds than you. I want more, and I feel like if she can dominate like that, like when she's going head to head with a Kalani Brown, a Tierra McCowan, even the 2 New York Towers, it's like, that's when I want you to own. Like, sure, it's easy to own if you're going against someone who's 6 foot, 6'1". Like, own when you're going up against Mato Imato, and that's my one hesitation with her.
Yeah, and honestly, that's part of the defensive struggles, I think, is that they do give up a lot of O boards on the other end, which is partly due to that. In fact, I have the stats here. They have the worst defensive rebounding rate in the league, and
Sound about right.
that's it's hard to get stops if you're giving teams 2 or 3 shots. So I love this offense. I think when they're fully healthy, this is another team that I don't think has very much margin for error in terms of injuries because they don't have very much depth. But when they're fully healthy, I think the offense is beautiful. I think it's really fun to watch. I think Girl Dad has done a great job with it. I love the stuff that he runs. You just got to stop people. If you're going to win a championship, you got to get some stops.
Listen, I'm here for a first round matchup of Aces and Mercury. I'm here for it. Even though I picked them as my final matchup, I'm here for the first round, just for the fireworks alone.
Yeah,
I'm here.
sign me up.
I mean, I'll take Minnesota. We'll take Minnesota, Seattle, 4-5, Vegas. Yeah, I'll take it. Lynx have shown they can take New York. Maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
Now let's check we talked about the bets. Let's check our preseason bets. Let's see how Calvin's doing so far.
Uh-oh.
Let's check.
Here we go.
So actually, there's no negatives. There's all positives. We talked with Diana Taurasi. The line was 20.5 games played. You took the over. Congratulations, you've already won. She's played 21. So there's 1 point for Calvin. He's already won that one. Now let's see here. DT, the line was 8.5 techs. You said easy, push the over. Currently, she's at 4. Any concern, any wavering on that, or still going with the over?
Wow, I went easy over on 8.5, huh?
Mm-hmm. You said I couldn't put it high enough.
Yeah. Well, I may have been wrong about that because we're over halfway through the season and she is not quite halfway there. So we'll see. That feels like it's going to be a sweaty bet at this point.
Next one.
Wait. Oh. Sorry. Can we count Olympic techs if
Yes.
she gets a tech in the Olympics?
Obviously. Yeah.
All right, good. I feel a little bit safer. We got a few extra opportunities.
Clark, the bet was 19.5 points per game. You took slightly over and you said it will be 20 to 20.5. Currently, she's averaging 17.1 points per game. Nervous? Fully confident? Any wavering?
Yeah, I think it's going to end up going under. I think I'm going to end up losing that bet. If we went rest of the season, like I said, she's playing so much better and got that early month, welcome to the league, brutal schedule, all that out of the way. And rest of the season, I could see her at 19.5, but I don't know if she's going to average enough to pull the current 17 up to 19.5 with less than half the season to go. So I'll take the L on that one.
Next one, still with Clark. We did 8.5 techs on the season for the. You picked under. She's currently at 4. Confident,
Okay.
wavering, nervous?
Okay, well, she's not in the Olympics, so don't have to worry about counting Olympic techs on that one. Yeah, that one feels like it's gonna be sweaty too, but I do feel good that she's also like DT, not quite halfway there, and again, less than half the season to go. So hopefully she can reel it in just enough to cash me in under on that one.
Indiana, the line was 20.5 games won. You picked under. They're currently 11 and 15. Confident? Still
Way
confident?
less confident than I would have been a month ago. I would have said I had this in the bag at one point, and now I feel like maybe not quite in the bag yet, but I still feel like that's going under. They can only I mean they're 11 and 15, so in order to hit that over, you're talking about 10 and 5. I no, I don't think I did my math right on that one. They
Yeah.
have
You picked under. You picked under the
I picked
20.5. So
under
20
and
or
they're
under.
yeah, so in order to go over, they would have to win 10 games out of their remaining 14.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This
I
one
think
I
we're
was
still getting
this
it.
one you're almost there because you said at the beginning of this preseason you picked them over 14.5, which they already are. But length 20.5 games won. You picked over and said you're going to go exactly 21 wins. They are currently 17 and 8. Nervous at all?
I'm not nervous about the over. I'm definitely not hitting the exactly 21. I think that one's toast, but it is going over for sure.
Liked it. So you already broke the 14.1. You already won money on that one, but this one we're
Yep.
waiting on. The other one that you've already won, the Aces, I said at 34 and a half games won. You picked the under wisely because they're currently 16 and 8. Congratulations. There's your second win of the day.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Your last one, I said 2.5 of the 4 teams that were not in the playoffs last year making the playoffs this year. Reminder, the playoff teams that did not make the playoffs: LA, Phoenix, Seattle, and Indiana. You picked over, and we're saying the 3 were easily. Well, you said 2 easily, Phoenix and Seattle, and you said Indy. You'll go ahead and say makes the playoffs. Nervous, confident, wavering.
I feel pretty confident in that one. Yeah, I think Phoenix and Seattle are locks, and Indiana would take kind of a crazy collapse at this point because the only team who really has a shot to catch them is the Dream, and I'm not sure if I believe in Atlanta catching Indiana right now. So I think we're safe on 3 there.
Fair. There was your roundup. There was your bets. Confident, Calvin, in your bets. I mean, already got 2 wins.
I like to think that I'm coming out ahead. I didn't do the math as we were going, but it feels like I hit more than I lost on that one.
Got 5 left to figure out if you're gonna hit. Got 5 more, and you're already 2-0.
I'll
So
take it. 2 in the bag. Good place to start.
now I said, as we have the Olympics, but we're kind of come out of that break probably rather quickly. It's going to be 14, 15 games roughly for every team. Calvin, we're going to start with, is there a game or two in the regular season that you're like circle that really excited to see coming up between certain teams or certain players? And we'll start there. We'll start with that one.
It's the easy answer. It's the casual answer, but it has to be Liberty Aces for me because we haven't seen Liberty versus Chelsea Gray yet this year,
Same.
and Liberty have clearly separated themselves as the 1 seed right now. They probably start to finish have played as the best team so far. That doesn't necessarily mean they are or will be the best team. I still think that the Aces are favorites, but the Liberty have been the best team. But this is going to be the test, and we get it the second game out of the break. Liberty go to LA to start the next half of the season, and then they go to Las Vegas in the second game, August 17th. So at Las Vegas, healthy Las Vegas, assuming, again, knock on wood, none of them get hurt in the Olympics because the entire Aces team seems to be in the Olympics. And it's going to be a real test of if the Liberty are, in fact, as good as they have looked, which is better than last year. Are they? Of course, the actual test is going to be the playoffs because we know, like, Liberty beat the Aces in the regular season last year as well. But at the end of the day, you got to win in the playoffs. But I think a good place to start in terms of a measuring stick for the Liberty is going on the road to a healthy Vegas team, which we haven't seen yet, and we will see in the first week out of the break.
Fair. I'm going to go ahead and say I'm excited for Maya Moore jersey retirement day against Caitlin Clark's second match coming into Target Center.
I can't believe that you chose a Lynx game. That's crazy. How
And it's
who could have seen that coming?
And it's pettiness involved too, because After the last, keep in mind, Indiana won in Minnesota. That's great. Caitlin gave Shura a little stare down afterwards. She had a little stomp on the Lynx logo at half court. Just a reminder to Indiana, the actual Olympian in the game was on the bench for Team USA, so game might be a little different next time a MVP is in the game. I don't know if a Boston's going to have a double-double if he's there, so. And Maya Moore's in the house. I mean, does it get better than that? Come on now.
Oh, it's perfect.
If she's not courtside, I'm gonna cry. Like, just put her courtside right there. Just walk like a queen's box. Like, come on now. But yes, I'm looking forward to revenge of when Fee's on the court and we hand Indiana that loss back. So I'll take my chances. Now I've tried getting Calvin to get petty. He never does. One of these days I'm gonna get Calvin to get feisty on here. Well, let's talk about who are some players that really kind of maybe don't get their necessary flowers, kind of those unsung heroes in the first half of the year that you think could have a massive impact in the second half of the year.
You're going to like this one.
BC?
Atlanta Smith.
Oh, Atlanta Smith. Okay. I know it's BC or Atlanta.
What's that?
I thought it was going to either be BC or Smith.
Yeah, well, honestly, Bridget, too. I think the Lynx are full of unsung heroes. So, I mean, you could talk about most of the Lynx roster. I think Fee, it gets a lot of credit, but as she should, but they have so many other players who I think have stepped up and been so impactful for them this year. But I think Atlanta in particular, like bringing her in and her ability to stretch the floor and hold down that defense at the 5 spot and has been huge for their defense going from what it was the last 2 years, which, like we said, was not good, to arguably the best in the league this year, at a minimum, one of the best 2 in the league. I think Atlanta has a lot to do with that, and I don't think she's got nearly enough credit for it. So I'm gonna go with her.
So I'll give a quick shout out to Bridget Carlton because girl's been balling this year. Like, she's been amazing and just doing everything you've asked for. Like, she's getting beaten up by the post players. She's hitting threes. She's defending guards. I mean, it's just the BC way. Like, she always does it. I want to say Kayla Thornton could have a huge impact. You mentioned her earlier. If she can keep hitting those threes and you're opening that lane and you also can't then sag towards Sabrina, Benija Laney can kind of fight for her, body up her matchups if she gets a mismatch. Stewie and John, JJ can do that. I just think Kayla Thornton is such a key part on both ends because in some of the biggest wins, she's hit threes and she then looked to score. And I think if you have that punch off the bench that can kind of inside, outside, defend multiple different positions, maybe give the Benija Laney's, Courtney, you can give some of those stars a rest and not drop off anything in production. That's what's going to kind of help them stay at the top, kind of keep up there and all that. That's why I think she could have a massive impact in the second part of the year.
I agree. I love what she's done too. And I think in the interest of diversifying a little bit, I'll give one player that doesn't play for the Minnesota Lynx, since we just talked all about the Minnesota Lynx. This is a Minnesota Lynx podcast.
And Kayla Thornton. We talked about Kayla Thornton. She's New York.
You're right. I'll give us another player, not with the Minnesota Lynx. I do think she's gotten some credit, so not completely unsung, but probably not enough. I'm going to say Kennedy Carter. I think what Kennedy Carter has done. People are talking about her, but I mean, some of them for the wrong reasons, which is dumb, and obviously we can get into that. But even in terms of basketball, like, I don't think enough people fully understand just how good and impactful she has been on the offensive end for the Sky. And in terms of someone who could have an impact the rest of the way, like the Sky are looking like they got a good shot to be a playoff team. They're going to face the 1 or the 2 seed, most likely. You saw what Kennedy did going into Las Vegas, hanging 30 on them, getting the win at the Aces. Like, that's the type of game that you are going to be playing in the playoffs. You're going to be playing a road game at a team the caliber of the Aces. And if Kennedy can have a performance like that and somehow steal one like they did in that game, force whoever it is to come back and play a Game 3 winner-take-all in Chicago, I'm not saying they'll win, but how lit would that be? How lit would Wintrust Arena be for Chicago if they even get that Game 3? And I think Kennedy is a player who gives them at least like a glimmer of a chance to somehow get to that Game 3 against a team who is going to be heavily favored against them, whoever it is in the playoffs. And it's just so cool to see her revitalized and her rejuvenation this year. And she's just one of the best scorers in the league, flat out.
You were gonna see podcast King Calvin courtside for there if they drag it back. You're gonna see it. I will say maybe showing my age here a little bit. If people want a good WNBA kind of reference for her, older fans will know this name, Deanna Nolan.
Tweety?
The rise on the shot. It's such a comparison the way they can just kind of the speed, the rise. That's the one where she reminded me of Deanna Nolan. I remember her from her Detroit Shock days. You know, maybe it's the Lynx connection. Katie Smith, Cheryl Reeve were both on her team and coaches. But Deanna Nolan, it's that athleticism, but that stop and pop on a dime, and the high rise on it, where it's so hard even for defenders just can't get up high enough. So I said, if people want to, Kennedy Carter, Deanna Nolan, that's the name to reference if you want to know about WNBA history. Maybe let's always give them a history lesson here a little.
No, I love it. I love it. I haven't been following long enough to know all the history, so I love when you come at me with all the good nuggets.
So now one last attempt to get him feisty, a few more. Who are maybe teams that at the beginning of the year you weren't as concerned about? Now you're like, uh-oh. You're hitting the uh-oh button at this point.
That's a great question. Well, the Wings.
That's the
Although,
one I was assuming was going.
yeah, it's easy to just pick the last place team in the league, and it's also easy to pick on them when they haven't had Satu Sabali yet. And of course, she'll be back, but it's been really bad. There's no way to sugarcoat it, I don't think. Even aside from missing your best player, I don't know where this defense is. I got done ripping on the Mercury defense, but this defense is one of the worst defenses in the history of the WNBA. This Dallas Wings defense. They don't rebound at all on that end.
And you would think they would.
They should. They crash the boards hard on offense, and they always have like 10 7-footers on the court. So it's kind of baffling, but they just don't guard anyone and they don't get any rebounds. Their whole defensive strategy and Satu would change a lot of that, but I don't know. It might be time to blow it up. It's a tough. The vibes are not good in Dallas right now.
Fair.
Is that feisty enough?
No, because we're gonna go next question.
Okay.
What coach has the hottest seat right now?
Oh, that's a good question. LT's probably up there, I think, for all the reasons we just said. Yeah, I don't know. It's probably her. More I think about it, I think there was a time in this season where Christy Sides would have been in that conversation, but Fever turning things around, I think. I'm not gonna say that she has like the most secure job in the league, but she's at least not on that same level as LT anymore. I mean, she gets them into the playoffs as a 7 seed, and some of the wins that they picked up since then.
I think she's still feeling some embers.
Yeah, some embers. That's a good way to put it. Some embers. It's not like full blown, like scorching hot, but there's some embers there for sure.
See, I'm gonna go Eric Tebow.
Okay.
I know the Mystics have had a lot of injuries as well. I get it. It's just some of the decisions they made. Don't get me wrong, Dee. How do I just forget her name as I go to say it? Dee Richards. Great defender. I'm not sure when you're a team that struggles to score, she should be starting for you for 5 or 6 games. Completely confused. When you have Shatori Walker-Kimbrough coming off the bench, who can put up buckets. It's weird decisions, and it almost feels like late game management doesn't always seem the sharpest. I will stand by. I think the Tebow child that is the brightest future in coaching is residing at Fairfield, personally. So I think while it may be hard for Dad to have that conversation, I see Eric Tebow on a little bit of a hotter seat. I think last year maybe gives LT a little bit of wiggle room. So, but I think Eric Tebow, there's not a lot of promise around that team right now.
Yeah, it's a good point about last year with LT, because obviously the vibes were really high when they hosted a playoff series. They won a playoff series. Everything was going in the right direction for them. And at the end of the day, I do think what it's going to come down to her is how do they look when Satu is back? How do they look in the second half of the season with Satu? And that probably won't be enough to get them into the playoffs. But if you just isolate that 16 game stretch or 15 games in their case, and if they look competent on defense, and if they look anything remotely close to what they were last year, that might be enough to buy her another year. So we'll see.
Fair. I like it. So we'll give the fight. We'll live another day to try and get Calvin feisty. We'll keep trying. We'll keep doing this every year. We'll get him feisty. But Calvin, once again, can't say thank you enough. Where in the multiple of places can people find Calvin? He's on every podcast ever known to mankind. No. Where can they all find your work?
Yeah, I have a couple podcasts. I have Coast to Coast with Karina Mustafa. We're on a little bit of Olympic break. We just put one out this past week, so go check that out. But our next one will probably be coming out around when the WNBA gets going again. And then Bet She Wins as well, podcast with Mary Liebig, Jim Turvey, Danny Barlavi, talking about women's sports in general, focus on basketball a lot, but some others as well. And then I have some stuff on CBS Sports. You can go check out any social media. Is going to be C Wetzel 31, Twitter, Instagram, wherever. Go hit me up on any of those. And yeah, that's where I'm at.
Even just had a podcast with Nneka Ogwumike, and he still was on the Length pod. No, I'm kidding. No, she's great off the court. On the court, no friendships. So, but Calvin, once again,
how it goes.
Thank you. I cannot thank you enough. Let's see how many more bets you got. We'll keep you updated, fans. He has 5 more to go. He better hit that over on the length. I'm going to be really, really sad if he loses that one. So, but once again, thank you. Can't thank you enough.